Okay, so we saw in the content that it's quite possible to write 30 degrees all the way around so that it's easier for us to find the exact values of our triangle. So our angle, sorry. So here we know that cos theta goes first and that sine theta is second. Now in the assignment it says, could there be two possible values? So for example, if we use sine of theta equals, we know that sine theta is right over here, okay, so equals 1 over 2. So if I give you this as a problem, which you will have in your assignment, then you're going to have to figure out what this angle is. So we're going to go angle theta equals sin -1, the inverse of sine of 1 divided by 2. Now we should know that answer since it's right in front of us. So if you do 1 divided by 2 and you do the negative sign, it should be equal to 30 degrees. And that's what is right here. So that's how we know which triangle to build. So 30 degrees is right about here, from here to here. So you draw your angle, and then you have to look at any other possible values that are the same as 1 over 2. If you look around, there's another one right over here. But you won't know that unless you have the answers right in front of you, and that's not what's going to happen. You're going to have to find it yourself. So how do we determine what the other possible value is? We know that theta is equal to 30, but we have to find what the other one is, and that's what the tricky part is. So we know that sine of theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. So if I look at this, I'm going to build my special triangle that deals with the 30 degrees. Now it's important that you memorize where the angles go, because if your triangle rotates, it's going to change where your values are going to go. So between 30 and the 90 degrees, we have square root of 3. Between the 90 degrees and the 60 degrees, we have the value of 1, and the hypotenuse is 2. Now we're going to make sure all the values are all positive here. Since I'm in the first quadrant, my x values are positive, so that means square root of 3 will be positive, and my y values are positive. So I don't have to put any negatives for either my x or my y, and that's why you see that it's positive 3 over 2, comma 1 over 2. They're both positive. So we're going to do sine of 30 degrees equals the opposite, which is 1, over the hypotenuse, which is 2. So we know this. This has been given. We need to find another one. So we need to find where else in this graph is the 1 positive. Your hypotenuse is always going to be positive. But we need to find where else in these quadrants is 1 going to be positive. So my opposite, I'm looking for where I have another opposite that would be positive. If I go in quadrant 4, my opposite from angle 30 will be negative, because now I'm in the negative y values. So that doesn't work. Quadrant 4 doesn't work. If I come over here in quadrant 3, my opposite from angle 30 is, again, negative 1. So that doesn't work. We need positive 1. The only other spot where it's positive is on the other side in quadrant 2. So you can tell from this graph here that in quadrant 2, it's also positive. What's also positive? Sorry, your y values are also positive. So here we have positive 1 over 2, and this is working from sine of 30. However, you need to find what the angle is from here all the way to the start. That's what angle we're looking for. So in order to find that, you need to remember that from this line right up until the other line, we have an angle of 180 degrees. So, excuse me. So 180 degrees is the full angle, and now you're only looking from here to here, which means I'm going to take 180 and subtract the 30 degrees that we had from the start. So 180 minus 30 is 150 degrees. So we know that theta can also be 150 degrees. So there are actually two values. Theta equals 30 degrees and 150 degrees. So that you can calculate by looking at the opposite value, since your hypotenuse will always be positive. If you try this on your calculator, just make sure you're in degrees before you start. If you do sin of 30 degrees, which is what the angle was at the beginning, it was 0.5. 1 over 2 is 0.5. So this works. And we want to check if 150 works. So sin of 150 equals also 0.5. So that's how you know if it works. Now, general rule of thumb, you usually subtract by 180 by the angle that you found, or it's 360. So I'll give one more example of when you're going to have to subtract it by 360. And this example can be found in your assignment. So it says that, it's question 2C from your assignment, sine theta equals negative 1 over square root of 2. So we're going to go ahead and draw that. Okay. So we're going to calculate what this angle is first. So angle theta equals sine negative 1 of negative 1 divided by square root of 2. When you evaluate this, you get an angle of negative 45 degrees. Now, in order to draw a negative angle, you start from the middle and you go not counterclockwise, but you go clockwise. So negative 45 degrees is found right over here. Okay, right over here. However, when we write degrees, we're actually just going to write 45 degrees here, so that's not too confusing. So this means that we're using the special triangle that has 1 square root of 2. Now the square root of 2 is always the hypotenuse, and the two ones can be placed accordingly. Now, my x values are positive, but my y values are actually negative. So we're going to put a negative 1 here for the y value. Okay? And that makes sense because the opposite from angle 45, which is what we will be working with, is negative 1. And since sine is opposite over hypotenuse, I need to make sure my opposite is negative. So this makes sense. Now, where else is this side negative? The only other quadrant where this is negative is in the third quadrant, right down here. If I go up in this quadrant, my y values will be positive, so that doesn't work. If I try to draw my 45 degrees in the second quadrant, my y values here are also positive, which doesn't work. I need it to be negative. So I'm just evaluating what's happening here, and I know that that will be negative. My y values will be negative in the third quadrant. So we're going to complete our triangle. We have 45 degrees here, 45 degrees down here. We know that my x values are actually going to be negative over here, and my hypotenuse is positive as always. So from angle 45, my opposite is negative 1, and my hypotenuse is square root of 2. So that works. But what is this other angle? When it's a negative angle, you're going to subtract by 360. So you're just going to say 360 minus 45 equals, and that equals 315 degrees. So we know that theta is equal to negative 45 degrees and 315 degrees. And this is because our unit circle happens to have two negative opposite sides in two different quadrants. So yes, this is very confusing. If you need some extra help, I suggest that you message me and we can meet in the online room and we can try to work through it together. But I'd like you to check these values to make sure that they work. So we're just going to check this. We're going to do sine of a negative 45. Sin of negative 45 is negative 0.7. So we need to check that this here is negative 0.7. So negative 1 divided by square root of 2 is indeed negative 0.7. Okay, so now we're going to try sin of 315. And sine of 315 is also negative 0.7. So that's how you find the second value, your other angle that's needed for the assignment. Again, if you need some extra help, make sure that you message me. This is not an easy thing to learn on your own.